Greetings, my name is Slight, and this is a actually useful Lee tier list. We're going to go through this list one by one and explain every level here and all three of the builds that this list allows you to play. If you are looking for nothing more than a functional tier list, feel free to pause the video now. You'll be reading from top to bottom, left to right. These will be chosen based on three builds that you'd like to go for. So at some point while you're playing the run, you'll choose either the Unkillable fast firing weapon build, the Spiritual Flame build, or the Cataclysm Meteor build, and then you'll sort of ignore these other two gray ones, and then it's just top to bottom, left to right. Okay, this will work in Reincarnation or Elite. Just skip the if you're in Elite, Nightmare, Normal, just skip the Spiritual Blessings and take the other kinds of Ascensions. These builds will work just fine for you, but they get absolutely cranked when you get into Reincarnation. Lee is definitely one of, if not the strongest all-around character in the game, so all of these should be quite helpful. That being said, for those who have an expectation around what is going to be included in this video, I am just going to be covering a general tier list, if you are just looking for me to go through and explain this tier list from bottom to top, which I usually do when I go through these, feel free to skip to the next section. I got a couple announcements that I need to go through, and if you don't care, just skip it. Main announcement is that I did not do any spicy builds for this. I do have a couple in mind, but I just haven't had time to actually run them. Honestly, my work at this time is just taking a lot of my brain space. I have a relatively challenging job, and right now that is exceptionally the case, and I need a lot of focus there, and I just haven't been having time or energy or enjoyment to play Gunfire. Gunfire takes a long time for each run, and I just haven't had that time. So I think that as far as making this type of content that requires a lot of games, I bit off more than I could chew as far as promising that I'd go through and update all these tier lists. When I made these originally, I had a lot more free time, and there was a lot less on my plate as far as life stuff is concerned, and that's just not the case anymore. So this will be the last tier list that I do. I just really don't have time to do it, and I really don't want to, and that's the biggest thing. If I was really interested in it and like feeling like I was getting something good out of the work, then I would be happy to do it. But I really like doing the lay low one, but this Lee one has just not been very fun, and maybe it's because I don't like Lee. But either way, going through all the characters seems like a huge amount of work that I'm just not interested in doing. And so one of the great things about having this channel be unmonetized is that, you know, there's really not an obligation that I have besides what I say I should do, which is something that, you know, I am trying to do what I say I'm going to do, but I also have to balance like where this channel is in the priority of my life, and it's just not that high, and it never has been, right? The whole goal of this was to help people and to build a community, because I didn't see anyone else who was really doing this in a way that wasn't for their own gain, right? A lot of people who make YouTube channels do so for their own gain. That's the fundamental, and I mean, it's not wrong, but like it doesn't necessarily build a community. What it really does is it's trying to grab attention, keep that attention here, and it's just using the game as an avenue for that attention, right? And so I tried to do something different than that, and I think over the past year I've been relatively successful. I'm personally not super interested right now in playing some Gunfire Reborn, but I probably will make a couple videos, including a Lee video with some of these spicy builds coming up. So feel free to look out for those if you're interested in them. But the expectation is that the videos that are coming out next are not going to be as highly produced necessarily, and they may be of different games or different content as well. Like the actual content of the thing will be maybe a different game. I've been playing Marvel Snap lately, which I enjoy, and it's honestly like a much better built game than Hearthstone ever was, in my opinion. I think that it's in a really, really good spot, and I really do like card games, so that might be something I try to play a little bit. Because again, I see whenever I go to look for Marvel Snap, like the main reason I started making Gunfire content was because I went to look for content, and like so that I could learn. And the people who were teaching me, I was like, I just got this like sort of cringy vibe, and that same thing's kind of happening in Marvel Snap. Where like they're good people, don't get me wrong. It's not a insult. It's just like I'm very picky about like like the incentives people have for what they're doing. And like when I see someone who's, you know, who's creating quote helpful content, but really they're just like trying to drive a monetization process so that they can maximize profits and growth opportunity from their channel, it just feels gross. Like it's sort of like you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I also feel like people can tell, you know, like when you're forcing it, you know, like the strain in your voice can be heard. And even if someone's not listening for it or thinking about it, there's a reason that you're not popping off, right? And I'm not saying that I make the best content ever, you know, like maybe my stuff would be a little bit better if it was a full-time job, you know, maybe I'd have more time to really, you know, get it just right. But you know, I tried to do some of the things that I cared a lot about. And if I make some more stuff, then I'll continue to do that. I guess one thing that I think is really important in my professional life and has not been something I've been able to prioritize for this channel is if I say that I'm going to do something, that I always ensure that I'm pretty much going to do that before I say it. There's been quite a few things as far as running this channel that haven't panned out that way. And you know, oftentimes it's because in the moment, like I feel like that is if I felt the way that I felt at the time that I said I was going to do that, like for the rest of the time, then I would be able to. But and I think that you will understand that it's just not the way that works out when like this cannot be higher priority than like my life stuff, right? And even my emotional state, like regulating that is far more important than like managing to meet the expectations that I set, that past Slight set for himself. If they no longer match up with what I'm willing to do without it being like suffering, right? So anyway, I hope that that's understandable. I hope that that's okay. And if this is the last Gunfire video I ever make, then let's make it a good one. All right, let's talk about Lee. So without further ado, let's talk about the Firefox. All right, Firefox is part of the DLC. What is that DLC called? Visitors of the Spirit Realm. She's got a couple really interesting things going for her. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit here. All right, one of the first things is that practice makes perfect is one of her hero talents, and when you charge Spiritual Flame and it hits an enemy, energy that is consumed in charging that Spiritual Flame will increase the stacks of Practice Makes Perfect. And for every 1,200 stacks that you get plus 30% charging speed, up to 3 stacks, so plus 90% charging speed at max, so close to double the charging speed, which is great. You do have to hit an enemy though, so if you miss enemies or they die to a burning tick right before that thing hits them, that doesn't work. So I'll make the case, and if you've seen any of my Lee videos, that Practice Makes Perfect and stacking that up is good in every build, including all 3 of the builds listed in this tier list. You'll notice we see Flame Forged, all right, in all 3 of the builds. Okay, that means we want to be casting Spiritual Flame, and if we're casting that quicker, that's better, all right? Even some of these builds literally have us just charge it and fire it without even charging it up more than that, all right? Especially the Cataclysm build, all right? We can talk about why you'd want to do that later. But so early game, I really suggest that you're utilizing Spiritual Flame off cooldown as much as possible and that you're never at full energy. That's a good indication that you're working through Lee and you're actually kind of working through her early game the way that I would expect you to. Flame Arsenal's fine. You get an extra fire weapon. Blazing Meteor, whatever, you get more Blazing Meteor damage. Max Shield and Inflict Burning when someone hits you. The burning deals 0 damage, so it's only useful for proccing other burning effects. You may not know this, but the way burning works is it always, if there are 2 instances of burning on someone, really, there's only 1 instance that's active at any time. So if you apply a 0 burning and then 1 second later you actually hit someone and apply burning, this 0 burning is not going to override. It always will do the highest possible damage that it can, and it keeps in context all of the different burning applications that have been applied. And so as one falls off, it'll just do the next highest one, right? So that's a little bit of technical information about how burning affects. So this has really no downside to it. If you are a discerning person, you might be concerned with the impact of this, but that is not the case. Let's talk about Hunt for Fire. Take a little drink of water here. My throat's acting up a little bit. Oh. Hunt for Fire says plus 50% damage against enemies in the burning effect. Unlike the 50% damage versus elemental effect inscriptions, this is not multiplicative. It is simply an additive damage increase. It also increases the damage of burning, resulting in a 30% damage per second instead of 20% damage per second. So if you didn't know that it doesn't say that, but it does do that. And that's probably one of the coolest parts about it. It kind of is an activator for these like big burning hits from Spiritual Flame and Cataclysm. It's a significant increase in the damage, the burning of the burning effect. But what's most important here is that this 50% damage against burning effect doesn't require you to be using a fire weapon. You're getting this damage if they're in burning. All right, so it means that unless we're using something like Furious Flame down here, we don't really have to be using a fire weapon. Okay, just gonna let that simmer in your brain for just a sec. All right, let's hop down here to the avoid just for this list tier. Now, one thing I'll say is that these ascensions are not bad by any means. All right, remember when I build a tier list, I build a functional tier list. I don't like to build arbitrary tier lists, which is like, what ascension is just like the best in a vacuum? It's like worthless, okay? And so many of them are like that, right? And especially for Gunfire, that just doesn't work. So what I've done is built a list that can be used every run, that slots you into 3 builds, but in this slotting, these ascensions don't work. Okay, that's really what all it's saying, all right? And those ascensions are Molten Meteor. After hitting an enemy with Blazing Meteor, you get plus 40, 60, 150 weapon damage, up to 3 stacks. Each shot that hits an enemy consumes 1 stack. So the way that this works is you have the stacks. The stacks aren't on the enemies, all right? So that's a little bit of what might be confusing. So if you cast 1 Blazing Meteor and it hits 3 enemies, you now have 3 stacks to use, okay? It's not like that each of them have 1 stack that you can consume on hitting each of them, which, honestly could be more interesting, but it's not the way that it is. This just doesn't fit with any of the builds. It's a totally fine ascension if you're building around it. If I ever do a spicy build, I do have a Cataclysm melee build on Lee that I was working on that does use Molten Meteor, and it's pretty fun. Flare Calling also, level 2 and level 3 really just don't fit. The level 1 and level 2 of these can be kind of splashed in as but they don't really further the builds the way that you need them to really be functional. Flare Calling says after hitting an enemy with a weapon, cast a Blazing Meteor on the enemies that does half normal and does 2 meteors. And there's a chance to cast Spiritual Flame. I've actually never played with level 3 Flare Calling. I should have. I think if I had gone through all the spicy builds, I definitely would have. I might even built something around that. Sounds like it's an interesting build around, right? Like maybe taking Ultimate Gambler first and then going for Flare Calling 3 as soon as possible, while picking like Spiritual Flame stuff. Interesting. That being said, this is reasonable and good, but not great for anything that we're trying to do. So I would suggest you not really going for it. There is a kind of like a build that I almost included in the list, which was like a B tier build, which is like a slow firing weapon type build. But if you're looking for information about some other kind of builds, like right here, fire weapon build, if you just scroll down on the wiki to Lee, you can go here. And this is written by Altana in the Discord. By the way, big shout out to Altana and Maytele, M-A-I-T-E-L-E, for helping me with this list and reviewing it to make sure that it was accurate. Both of them had some good suggestions. And Maytele, hopefully I'm pronouncing the name correctly, specifically said I should include this, but I feel like it added clutter and it's not quite strong enough. Like it's pretty B tier. Like it's really not always the most successful build, right? It's not bad though, but it's good. It's definitely usable, and it's like sort of fundamentally built around Molten Meteor and Flare Calling, right? Like these ones are kind of what really are one of the core pieces of this build. But you can find that down here if you want to read that and get some more information about it. That being said, let's go up to heat recovery. This is the bottom of the nothing better category. All right. Whenever energy is recovered or consumed, gain max shield equivalent to the energy change for a 6, 7, and 8 seconds. This is an incredible ascension. If for whatever reason you're building something that doesn't account for this, I think this is just in the Cataclysm build. You can always take one level of this. Heat recovery is interesting because Blazing Meteor, when it hits enemies, it recovers energy, right? 2 energy. And if you get Nourishing Flame, Nourishing Fire here, it does even more energy, significantly more actually. And if you're at max energy, heat recovery will still count the energy gain toward heat recovery. Okay, so that's really important to know. All right, so even if you're at max energy, you can get the heat recovery from casting those Blazing Meteors. Another good splash, speaking of, is Nourishing Fire. This can be splashed into any build. The first level is especially good early game when you're trying to build practice makes perfect stacks. All right, and realistically, anything that helps you with your energy, like Nourishing Fire, Energetic Spirit, or Endless Wildfires, all of these 3 are very, very strong early game, especially in a Spiritual Flame build, because they allow you to cast Spiritual Flame much more often early, and that allows you to build up your practice makes perfect stacks really fast, and the faster you get that stacked up, the more effective you're going to be. Okay, we've already talked about Molten Meteor here. Next up, as a splash, we've got Conflagration. If you're not doing a Spiritual Flame build, in all 3 of these builds, I do have you casting Spiritual Flame. So getting a level of Conflagration is a significant damage bonus to that spell. And if you're going to be casting it anyway, it doesn't hurt to have a little extra damage on it. Can't hurt, not a big deal. Another good splash is Flame Resonance level 1. Enemies hit take plus 10% damage and deal minus 10% damage up to 3 stacks. So if you're casting or auto casting any Blazing Meteors, then having some Flame Resonance is just helpful. You know, you're getting some multiplicative damage increases. Even if it was just a 10% multiplicative damage increase and a minus 10% damage dealt, that's not bad. I mean, honestly, that kind of stuff adds up. You know, those any multiplicative damage increase you can take in the late game is going to be worth it. And so one level of this is underrated. You may not feel like it's helping a lot, but a 10% multiplicative damage increase is nothing to you know, nothing to scoff at. You know, those add up. They really do. And if you can get one easily, take it. As the best splash, nothing better is Flare Calling. This kind of fits into any build. You know, if you're gonna shoot your weapon, you might as well get whatever you can from, you know, your intermittent shots. The Cataclysm and the Spiritual Flame build don't require you to shoot a lot, so you know, with Flare Calling, kind of works out since you have that CD of 1.5 seconds, and if you're not firing a lot, then it doesn't matter that there's this cooldown. You know. You can combine this Flare Calling with something like Flame Resonance or Nourishing Fire, and get the benefits like the damage increase from Nourishing Fire or the damage reduction and multiplicative damage increase for Flame Resonance without really costing you anything. In the still great category, we've got our boy Furious Flame. Obviously, you do not want to use Furious Flame unless you're using a fire weapon, unless that's your plan, okay? And it is good if you're using it's not amazing, right? It is maybe still great is saying it. You know, let's change it. Still good. There we go. All right. You know, it's giving you fire damage. The level 3 is actually a significant damage bonus. You know, being able to not take multiplicative negative damage impacts from other HP types is a big deal. But importantly, if you're using an Elemental Gemini, okay, and you share fire damage to your main hand weapon, that main hand weapon is not doing fire damage, okay? Meaning Furious Flame does not work unless your main hand weapon is a fire damage weapon, okay? The Elemental Gemini only shares the damage bonus versus red HP if you have a fire damage that you're sharing, okay? It doesn't share the elemental damage type. Most of you will know this, but, you know, just in case. you don't know that. All right, at the before we get into the 3 different builds, let's just go all the way to the top here to always pick. I think that this is the best Ascension on Lee by far, and that is Flame Talisman, and it is disgusting. It is better and worse than other things. There's some times when I think heat recovery might be slightly better, but on average, in these 3 builds, I'm going to say that Flame Talisman is definitely not something you should really ever be skipping. You know, it's really going to form the basis of your survivability on this character, there are runs where if you're just doing so much damage that everything dies before it can even get to you, I mean, you can skip Flame Talisman because you don't need it. But at that point, if you're already killing everything in one shot, why wouldn't you take a little bit more defensive stuff, right? You're already doing enough damage. So, Flame Talisman. After inflicting burning, you gain stacks, okay? Up to 5 stacks. And this happens anytime you're inflicting burning with no cooldown. So the faster you can gain burning stacks, the faster this stacks right back up. Each one gives you minus 10, 14, and 18 damage. All right? So that means that the maximum here of this is 90% damage reduction, I think. Okay? At max stacks, you also gain weapon and skill damage, which is just icing on the cake, especially because it's so easy to gain stacks. And being hit consumes stacks. All right, so really the biggest danger with Flame Talisman is like something like Annihilation Monk or an Octopus, where and if you're not playing the Unkillable fast fire weapon build, you're playing something like Spiritual Flame or Cataclysm, it does take you a little bit longer to build those stacks up, as opposed to like 1 second to build them back up. Those are like your biggest danger. Very similar to Voltaic Aegis, right? Voltaic Aegis has a very similar problem, but I'd say Flame Talisman is actually better on average than Voltaic Aegis is. Just because Voltaic Aegis is technically a little harder in certain builds to build up stacks. So I guess what I should say is there are some builds on Lee where Flame Talisman is better than Voltaic Aegis, and some builds where Voltaic Aegis is better than the Lee build. I would say that that's probably the most accurate way to say it. All right, let's get into the builds. So the A tier Cataclysm Burning Meteor build, I'm gonna go top, like left to right. Cataclysm is a pretty interesting blessing here. It gives you plus 1% multiplicative damage boost for every 1 energy stored. When casting Blazing Meteor at a target, you cast it on all enemies within 8 meters, and the way that works is it's 8 meters from where you casted. So you're sort of casting in an AoE. It's not 8 meters around you. Every remaining Blazing Meteor use will reduce the cooldown by 0.1 seconds up to 3 seconds. So if you have 8, like Blazing Meteors, and you are at full Blazing Meteor, you cast Blazing Meteor, the cooldown is going to be 3.2 seconds, or maybe 3.3, depending on how the math works out. Okay. Getting higher stacks of, the amount of Blazing Meteors you have actually matters quite a bit with this build, because it scales up pretty well, but you need like a significantly higher amount to really get that scaling to work. This makes stuff like Double Exhilaration, the Scroll Double Exhilaration, and I think there's one other one that significantly increase the amount of secondary charges you have. It makes them really, really good. I guess the blessing, I should have included it here. The blessing, one sec. Endless Assault. The reincarnation blessing, Endless Assault, also gives you extra. I should have included that here. You know, is it better than Skill Freak? Probably not. Is it better than Ultimate Gambler? Maybe. I don't know. It could be. It could be. It actually could be. So I'd probably slot it between Skill Freak and Ultimate Gambler. Endless Assault there. Okay, so that's how Cataclysm works. We get to do these AoE things. So I've got all these in a very specific ranking order. So let's start at Spiritual Meteor. I think the first level of Spiritual Meteor, a plus 100% additional base damage, is really, really important just to keep that base damage high. That first level of it really is a significant damage bonus, and then all the other things that we add on to it that make it even better are going to make it, even stronger, right? But that first level is so important. Then I strongly suggest Energetic Spirit. Okay, this gives you 60 max energy. Okay, and 60 max energy means a 60% multiplicative damage boost on all of your meteors with Cataclysm. Okay, That's a huge damage increase, all right? And the fact that it's multiplicative means it's going to combine with all these other increases that we're getting. The energy recovery speed also is helpful because that natural energy recovery speed also impacts heat recovery. So if you do have like a splash of heat recovery, this energetic spirit will help you there. Next, we'll go back for Unceasing Blaze. It's really just very helpful to have at least one level of this early so you can spam your Blazing Meteor a little bit more. The way this works is because each Blazing Meteor has a 50% chance to apply burning, you basically get +4 with a 25% chance to recover. So you go from 8 to 12, and for every 4 that you cast, you're going to gain 1 more. So really, you're kind of at 15 Blazing Meteors, right? That's kind of like if you just cast one after another, on one enemy, right? You're probably going to get 15. But the great thing is if you hit multiple enemies, if any one of them procs burning, you get your 1 Blazing Meteor back. And I'm pretty sure with Cataclysm, if any of the extra ones cause burning, you get your 1 back. I could be wrong about that. So the first level is really, really good. If it works the way that I think it does. You're seeing a little bit of lack of testing here, and so it's unclear exactly if that's the case. Next, we'll go back for Spiritual Meteor level 2. I do think you could prioritize Accurate Crush a little higher. Maybe Accurate Crush could be, because the first level of Accurate Crush is a huge deal. A huge deal. So maybe moving this to here would be totally worth it. But either way, let's say you go Accurate Crush. Blazing Meteor deals 200, so that's a plus 100% multiplicative damage increase when it's hitting 1 enemy. And I'd say that's pretty often. The area of effect of Blazing Meteor isn't huge. And this basically means that if you were going to hit 2 enemies with a Blazing Meteor, Accurate Crush will essentially do the same total amount of damage if it hits 1 enemy. Does that make sense? If there are 2 enemies, Blazing Meteor, boom, it hits both of them, doing 100% damage to both. That's 200% total damage. But now if I hit 1 with Accurate Crush, I'm still doing the same total damage output, but now on 1 enemy, which is really strong. And it's good for bosses. So having that early is probably worth it. Then we go back for Spiritual Meteor. Then we go back for Energetic Spirit 2. We don't need 3 because really we're just looking for that max energy. This is a 50% increase from our earlier increase, but our total increase is 120% multiplicative damage boost on our Blazing Meteors, which is awesome. So good. Go back for Blazing Meteor 3, and then we go into Nourishing Fire. Nourishing Fire is great because it restores energy, which is not going to be very helpful. All right. The main thing we want is when energy is full, increase weapon and skill damage by a percentage based on the enemies that we hit. All right. And so especially that first level gives us kind of everything we want from the damage increase. Okay. The energy. Oh, for each energy point. Oh, that's right. Okay, I got a little confused there. So the energy does matter. For every energy that we go over the max, we get a 1% damage increase that goes to weapon and skill damage. Really, we just want that skill damage. And I've seen like 150. When I have like Nourishing Fire level 3, like I cast Blazing Meteor once and I've got 150, 70 bonus skill damage. It is very good, especially at max level, and especially once you're getting into stage 3 and 4 where there are a lot of enemies. It adds up a lot. Also good in Spiritual Assault if you can get it. If you're doing like a Cataclysm build or like a Blazing Meteor build, Nourishing Fire is great just because it has so many enemies there are, right? Okay, that's Nourishing Fire. Then after we get the first level of it, which I think is a good value point, I'm going to say that Flame Resonance is kind of our go-to, right? Because we're casting so many Blazing Meteors, we're going to get the best possible value out of this Ascension. And this Ascension does have it has a high potential and a acceptable floor, right? But at max level, they take a 30%, they take 90% multiplicative damage increase to fire damage, and they do minus 60% damage. So, and it lasts for 16 seconds. So very, very effective tool for just extending the stuff that we already want to do with our Cataclysm build. Just very effective tool, works great, and is a significant damage bonus and survivability tool. And that's why I prioritize it higher than sort of the rest of this stuff, which kind of goes back for damage, right? And so now we're going to go back. We're going to get our Accurate Crush leveled up. We'll go for some Nourishing Fire. Then we go for Flame Forged. And Flame Forged works in a unique way, all right? It is very good, and it could be technically a little higher if you really wanted it to. I think that you can make an argument that it could go here or even here, depending. But Flame Forged says after catching Spiritual Flame, for every 1 max energy, you get weapon and skill damage for 6 seconds, and you recover it for every burning effect inflicted during this time. The big key thing here is that we want to stay at max energy because Cataclysm's multiplicative damage bonus is based on your current energy. So we really don't want to spend our energy. So what we do is we just charge Spiritual Flame and then instantly cast it, and we get the full benefit. Flame Forge does not care how long you charge Spiritual Flame. It just cares that you cast it. So you're just going to go boom, cast it. You've got 6 seconds to start applying burning effects, and because you're going to be casting so many meteors, you're going to get those burning effects, and it's going to be pretty easy to keep Flame Forge going, especially if you've got level 2 energetic spirit here. You're getting a very significant weapon and skill damage bonus that often can last 12-15 seconds if there's a critical amount of enemies around you that will keep you applying the burning effect. And then we go back for Unceasing Blaze. I think the first level is really good. You could make an argument that the second level might be higher if you're running out of stacks. But I think that I would probably prioritize the damage over those things because even if you're running out of stuff, even if you're sort of like running out of Blazing Meteor charges, there are other ways, like you're sort of benefited by being low on meteor charges because when you're low on secondary charges, the game gives you more. So, like, it's really not an issue until late game, right? And so then by then you probably have level 2 or level 3 of this. And even then, it's kind of hard to make that case. So I could see level 2 being higher, but in general, having them at the end isn't going to negatively impact your build too much. All right, so that's Cataclysm, Blazing Meteor. Let's move on to Spiritual Flame. All right, and I think a lot of people are surprised to see anything above this. Spiritual Flame is really strong, but we haven't talked about this top one yet, and it is way better. All right, it is, I don't know how you lose, as long as you don't get, if you can get one level of Flame Talisman, I think that this build up here is just really hard to beat. All right, so we're going to start off with Raging Inferno. This gives you plus 15% base damage of Spiritual Flame for every enemy hit, minus 10 stacks if you miss, up to 30 stacks. Very hard to miss. So the negative impact is like never. The energy recovery is nice, as it gives you energy for every 2 meters that you've moved, which works out really great with heat recovery, because this is going to give you gain max shield. All right. So yeah, Raging Inferno is just an insane amount of damage on Spiritual Flame. There's really not more to say there. All right, next up we have Overconsumption. Oh, where did I lose it? All right, this gives you weapon and skill damage, cooldown reduction, movement speed, max HP, max shield. This is just, if you're getting this on Act 3, you're going to be very happy, okay? It's very hard. Even getting half of the bonus here is totally worth it. This gives you movement speed. The cooldown doesn't matter very much, but the HP is very helpful. The cooldown doesn't matter at all, excuse me. I think it does affect your dash though. And then the skill and weapon damage is just absurd. So really, really good. The skill damage is great. I don't think that Overconsumption is as good in the Cataclysm Blazing Meteor build because Skill Freak is just so much better. Just is, since you can get a multiplicative damage increase on your secondary skill. I think it's better. Also, Occult Booster is a great choice. Just it gives us a chance to Occult Booster or what's the one they buffed? Steady Profit. Both of these are kind of like in the same bucket to me. You're getting more enhanced scrolls, and getting more enhanced scrolls just gives you a higher chance to get something that's going to really, synergize with your skill-based build. And some of those enhanced scrolls that are skill-based are just almost instant wins. And so that's definitely worth going for. And then Painkiller, because you're applying so much burning so consistently, having Painkiller is great, and there's a pretty good chance you might be using a corrosion weapon. And in that case, having the painkiller really is awesome, because it makes decay, whenever you apply decay, you're getting sped up, and whenever you're applying burning, you're actually healing yourself. And painkiller is especially good because heat recovery, all right, which is one of the powerful defensive tools that this build has. Heat recovery works in a specific way, and I'll talk about it later, but it only affects your max shield. So like gaining max shield when your shield's low isn't helpful. So having this painkiller, like sort of healing you up and getting you to a position where you can get that shield regenerating is very strong. Not the strongest argument, but I think you see where I'm going. All right, let's go back here. Number 1 is Energetic Spirit. We've got Energetic Spirit, Wildfires, and Nourishing Fire here, all highly rated. And that's because we need at least one of these as early as possible, okay? And I would put like a caveat on Nourishing Fire and on Wildfires to say that like the first opportunity to get one of these is like S tier, you need to pick it, all right? Like Nourishing Fire is the worst of these 3 options, but if you haven't been offered anything else, you need to take it. And it's because you need some way to gain energy back as early as possible, so you can start stacking Practice Makes Perfect as quickly as possible. The sooner you have that stacked up, the better your build's going to be, the more DPS you're going to do. Doubling the charge speed of Spiritual Flame is incredibly important, and the sooner you can do that, the sooner this build is going to be more effective. It's not a huge deal, but you know, if you're trying to win every run, then making sure to prioritize that is going to be very important. So then we go back for our first level of Conflagration. The first level is so important because it's such a big damage boost. And it's giving you this damage increase based on energy point consumed, right? And because we are getting more Energetic Spirit, we have more energy to spend on it, so the Conflagration is going to be even more impactful. Endless Wild, 1 point in Energetic Spirit, Endless Wildfires, like both of these together early, gives us a really powerful ability to stack up Practice Makes Perfect and cast an absolute torrent of Spiritual Flames. And the scaling on this build is incredible. And speaking of scaling, let's move to the next one. The bad boy himself, Firefox Blessing, is sort of the activator, the thing that really cranks this stuff to the next level. After Spiritual Flame evolves, it deals an additional 50, 75, or 100% damage. And at level 2, it can evolve a second time at 60 energy for another plus 100% in AoE range. And then at the third, it also leaves a burning path, which deals 25% damage for 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. Okay, which is another 150 damage, 150% of the damage on top of the burning they're taking over 3 seconds. All right, and I'd say that's especially good for some bosses who tend to stay in one place, like Itchy or something like that. Firefox Blessing is what allows us to like really scale this up to some higher levels. Especially Firefox Blessing with level 3 Energetic Spirit, where your energy consumption can exceed 60. I mean, you can just cast some crazy high damage Spiritual Flames that are just truly insane in the damage that they do. So once we've got Firefox 3, we can go back to get Energetic Spirit, try to get that up to level 3, then go back for Conflagration. That one level of Conflagration is enough to conflagration. I think that's what it is enough to give us the baseline that all these scaling things are going to be effective for where we're at in the game. But then we want to go back and keep that base damage pumping up, all right? Because it's base damage, it is additive with the, with the Raging Inferno. So that's one of the reasons I don't rate it as highly, because they're not multiplicative with each other. But they're still very good, especially because you get this energy scaling, this sort of secondary effect. The amount of self-synergy in this build is truly ridiculous. And then we go back for Heat Recovery. I still think that Flame Talisman's probably the better way to go. You're just going to be casting so many Spiritual Flames, each of them having a 50% chance or 100% chance to apply burning. It's just really easy to keep that Spiritual Flame Talisman charged up with 5 stacks. But Heat Recovery is a great choice. We are going to be spending and recovering energy at a high rate. The main thing we need to do is just make sure that we're getting that first big heat recovery payback from max shield gain before we get hit. That's the most important thing that you need to keep in mind when using this heat recovery abilities. You need to use it before you get hit, otherwise it's not going to be useful. Because it doesn't, unlike Sword Guard has this unique thing where it heals shield and gives you max shield, and there's a lot of complications that come with that as far as optimization. Heat recovery is a little more simple. It's still extremely powerful, but you just need to make sure that you have max shield when you're gaining that energy. Okay. Then we go back for Flame Forge. Flame Forge is just a easy no-brainer. Everything else that we've taken up to this point is going to be more impactful, but Flame Forge is definitely something we should keep. Then I would go back for Fiery Heart. Fiery Heart's better if you're using a corrosion weapon, right? If you're trying to do some like weapon hybrid here, that's a good way to go. This will sort of guarantee the burning effect, and that allows, like, you know, if you've got an Aura Venom, you can just kind of unload it real quick, and you're going to get a lot of explosion procs, and it's going to do a lot of damage. A lot of combustion procs, excuse me. After that, we can go back for Endless Wildfires. While Endless Wildfires is really good, and that's why it's, you know, inside the slot, I think that everything else sort of outshines it. You know, I think you're getting enough energy back with Energetic Spirit, 1 level of Nourishing Fire, you know, even the first level of Endless Wildfires. I really don't think it's a huge concern. I would say that the main thing you need to be aware of is that, like, if you're not taking Endless Wildfires, is like, I don't have to think. All right, that's really, like, getting levels of it doesn't really make your build that much stronger, but it makes it so you don't have to think as much. But really, up until you have level 2 and level 3 Endless Wildfires, I think the rest of the stuff is more impactful, but it also means that you have to be conservative with your energy consumption. All right, you can't just keep like, you know, throwing Spiritual Flames and hope that it wins. You do have to, like, kind of manage your energy, and it's not a big ask. But I think on average you're going to have a better run if you're just managing your energy consumption and not relying on Endless Wildfires to, like, recover it all for you. Like, when I by the end of the game, even if I don't have, like, more than 1 level of Endless Wildfires, I don't feel like I'm hurting for energy. All right, let's go to the last one we're going to cover, which is the Unkillable fast-firing weapon build. Okay, S-tier Unkillable fast-firing fire weapon build. Just took like a 20-minute break there. Let my throat rest a little bit. Okay, so there's kind of 2 ways to play this. You can either play Flame Dance or Energy Draining, and they're similar but not quite the same. Okay, if you're playing Energy Draining, which I would say is the more powerful build, basically the goal is you need a weapon you don't need a fire weapon. Okay, in fact, a corrosion weapon is probably going to work better. You need, or even a lightning weapon. You just need some kind of fast firing weapon, even if it's normal. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to Elemental Gemini a fire tower onto it, or something with higher than 50% fire chance. Okay, fire burning effect chance. It needs to be a fast firing weapon, and the whole point of this build is to just apply an a huge amount of the burning effect. Okay, because the way Energy Draining works, it says after casting Spiritual Flame. Once again, it just says casting Spiritual Flame. So all we need to do is charge it, cast it real quick. Okay, we enter Burnout, and it's actually better potentially to not spend a lot of energy. There's a little nuance to that. Okay, but you don't have to spend energy, because then you actually have all that energy, and the benefits of Energy Draining run out once all of your energy depletes. But after you catch Spiritual Flame, basically what's going to happen is your energy is going to start depleting. All right, and the longer that this effect goes, the faster and faster it starts to deplete. Okay, but you gain energy every time you apply the burning effect. Okay, so with this fast firing thing that you've got going on, you can, especially early, you'll just stay max. All right, like it's like you're going to be kind of doing this thing, but then as it kind of gets lower, you're going to kind of do this thing as you, like, kill enemies. And if you're doing what I'm suggesting, fast firing weapon plus fire tower or something better, Elemental Gemini, you can maintain the max level of the burnout effect, meaning you're burning what does it say? But consume 5 energy. It goes from, it's consumed. You need to basically beat 25 energy a second. That's what you need to beat to stay in the 5th sort of tier of the burnout buff. And you only gain 2 energy every time you apply the burning effect, right? So you need to be, like, So for it to work out, you need a weapon that is going to do, it's going to hit. Okay, so if every burning effect is 2, all right, I'm doing this math in my head. Let me pause. Okay, it's simpler than I thought it was. Okay, it's if you get 2 energy every time you apply the burning effect, all right, and you have a 50% chance to apply the burning effect, all right, then you need to hit 25 times every second to keep up, all right, on average. Okay, but if you're doing higher than that, then you're doing good. So like, what weapons do that, right? That's sort of the question. Whoops, wrong thing here. And there's quite a few. Let me pull up the weapons real quick. But so like a lightning blast, how's this going to do? This does 6 rounds per second, so that's really not good. All right, angelic aura, 24 rounds per second, right? So that's right there, right? If we had an angelic aura with a fire tower, we would be able to basically keep this buff going the whole time. Scalpel's going to work. None of this stuff is really going to work. You could do it with a wild hunt if you had like a, well, you can't really do that. You'd have to have advanced depot for that to work. So never mind. But like laser gloves are going to work, right? I think that's the last one we'll look at. But this one, 16 rounds per second. So I mean, you could make this one work, I'm sure, if you got some like the right ascensions, and it has its own burning effect chance, right? So that actually adds up, right? That kind of changes the calculation into our favor. Anyway, you see my point. So why would we want to do this way, right? Because we're getting 150 times 5, right? What is it? So it's not that at 6 stacks, right? It's 900% weapon damage, 60% rate of fire. Rate of fire increases our ability to apply more burning effects, right? So it's self-synergistic, 60% movement speed, and 30 energy consumption per second. That's a lot, all right? That's a big deal, all right? And that is why this build is so insane, okay? So the other way to play this, all right? Okay, and I'll say this. If you're going energy draining, that's why energetic spirit is included in here, okay? If you're not taking energetic spirit, if you're not taking energy draining, I would skip energetic spirit for this build. All right, I don't think you need it. Okay, you could take it, but it's not as useful. The other way you can play is Flame Dance. You can take Flame Dance first. This is plus 30% weapon damage, and the enemy takes 5% extra damage when I inflict the burning effect on an enemy. Now, importantly, again, this, if I understand correctly, this isn't basically. I have the stacks. I'm not applying the stacks to the enemy, right? So I don't have to hit them 10 times to make them take 50% extra damage. I have the stacks, meaning if I apply burning and I have 10 stacks, any enemy in burning takes 50% multiplicative damage boost, while I have 300% weapon damage bonus, okay? This synergizes in the same way. Basically, we apply a absolute gobs and gobs of burning, okay? And that synergizes because it makes us do a lot of damage, okay? It's not quite as good as energy draining, but it's less complicated. It's very straightforward, and it's still extremely powerful. And if you get energy draining and flame dance, well, look at you. Look at you. You're going to win this game, all right? And it's going to be one of the easiest runs you've ever had. Next up is Jackpot. Jackpot gives you 2,000 gold and 50% extra bonus gold, including a 25% chance on getting Jackpot, if you have your max talents, to get 4,000 gold because of the talent that gives you a 25% chance to double any gold you get. And because the whole point of this is to be pretty much unkillable, and that's why it's S tier and pretty much is a guaranteed win, Fake Death is wonderful. Very, very good. The whole point of this build, all right, is to trigger lots of burning effects. We will basically keep Flame Talisman at max stacks the entire game because of how much burning we're going to apply. And we are going to have a huge amount of shield, and we're going to do a huge amount of damage because of Flame Dance, Energy Draining, or both. All right. The reason we take Jackpot is because we need to get an Elemental Gemini up as soon as possible. In the early game, we want to be using a fire weapon, something like the Flame Dragon. That would work really well. That's going to allow the Flame Dragon's going to apply enough burning for us to be functional early game. But when we're really going to take off is when we get that burning, the fire tower elemental Gemini with our fast firing weapon. That's when we're going to start doing the crazy damage. Okay, so I highly recommend that you get Flameforge first. And once again, we're just start cast. This has self synergy with energy draining, right? And it's very easy to keep it up 100% of the time. Okay, so it's really not a big deal to be using this effect, and it's just free damage that literally just permanently stays on as long as you have an enemy to shoot at. Next up, I suggest 1 level of Burning Bullet. The first level is pretty good. Basically, we don't care about the damage increase at all. We just want to consume energy, okay? And the reason we're doing this is because it synergizes and makes us even more unkillable, because the next kind of 3 things we're doing, sorry about my phone there, I usually don't have my ringer on, but I need it on, is because we're prioritizing heat recovery. We already have enough damage from either Flame Dance or Energy Draining to win the game, all right, just pretty much. But the reason this build is so incredible is because we can be impossible to kill, all right? Energy Draining especially, all right, is insane because it consumes also and gains so much energy that heat recovery goes off the charts. I mean, it is absolutely insane, all right? Absolutely insane how much energy that we gain from heat recovery if we've got energy draining going on, right? But other than that, we're still going to be gaining a lot of energy just naturally from applying burning, right? If I remember correctly, you do get some energy just from that, if I'm not mistaken. Spiritual Flame primary. Burning to all enemies. Killing any enemy that was affected by burning will recover 2 energy. So even if you're playing in like lower, like without energy, if you're playing under reincarnation, so this build still has self synergy. It's not going to be as high damage though. So I would say that that's one big downside of this particular build. This is going to be a tougher. I would probably skip this one if you're under reincarnation. The Spiritual Flame or Cataclysm is going to work better. This one's going to probably be only a reincarnation build. It would work fine, but not great otherwise. We can take energetic spirit here if we are going for energy draining. If we're going for Flame Dance, probably worth skipping, not a big deal. And at that point, the crux of what we're doing is already figured out. Okay. After that, we're really just going to go back for Burning Bullet, which is just going to increase our shield even more. And we're just going to kind of throw in a little bit of a Flare Calling package just so that we can further extend the functionality of the build. So 1 level of Flare Calling, we're just getting it to apply the effects for Nourishing Fire, which is going to give us extra damage from energy if we're maxed out on our energy, which is going to be really easy to do, and getting those bonuses from Flame Resonance, as well as 1 level of Blazing Rain, which, I see here, this in Cataclysm, I don't have Blazing Rain. Blazing Rain is really good. We should have Blazing Rain, somewhere here, right? Obviously, that was a oversight on my part. I'll put that in the comments. But Blazing Rain here also works out great, just gives us a higher chance to hit more meteors, even though we're only casting 1 meteor, because we're really not looking for the damage, we're looking for the effect, and the more meteors that get hit, the more effect is going to be effective. And then we just go back to max out Nourishing Fire and Flame Resonance, and I think that covers it. I'll make sure to put a comment in about Cataclysm, and I hope that you're not too disappointed about me, not prioritizing this stuff more than this. And I hope you understand. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, and I'll be happy to kind of tell you what's going on in the comments. But hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you learned something, and best of luck in your next runs. See you later. Bye.